Let's go. Yo. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last. Yeah, it's a new me, never gonna look back. Never gonna look back. Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast. And that's facts.
Welcome into the Chicago Sports Podcast. How you guys doing today, Saturday afternoon? It's good to have you guys with us as we're talking about the Bears and everything Chicago sports. Monsters of the Madhouse, Chicago Sports Podcast. Like and subscribe our YouTube page and follow us along as I am excited to do a show for the first time here with Brian. Just getting to know Brian a little bit here. Brian, it's good to have you on today.
Well, thank you very much, Matt, and I'm looking forward to the show, and I'm just incredibly grateful and happy to join Chicago Sports Podcast. Last night was a very warm welcome, and I had a lot of fun, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy today's show and meet even more new Bears fans.
Oh, I know. We're excited to have you. And by the way, speaking of that, Brian just said he did his very first show last night, did an awesome job, which you can follow, and you can check that out when you go to our YouTube page and all of our other shows too. So make sure you do that. You get those notification options in. And today we're talking about free agency. We're talking about the salary cap. Because, Brian, this is hard to believe, man, but we're coming up to free agency here in just a couple of weeks. And the Bears have a lot of money. They have a lot of cap room right now, over $60 million in cap space. But you can clear up some more because there are some moves that the Bears can make right now that they can clear up there $100 million, or probably with some of the moves they can make, they can do up to $100 million of cap space. And as you kind of look through this list, Brian, we're going to go over a couple of players. Well, there's a couple of players right away that if you cut them here over the next couple of weeks, that space is going to open up. So we're going to go over a couple of those players, and I'm going to bring up one other trade option as we close out the show, Brian, on it, that I would see if you're for or against, that I think could be a possibility. But the first person I thought about, Brian, is Demarcus Walker. I think that's the easy one. He's going into his last year of his deal. So he had a pretty good year last year. I think he's actually been pretty good for us for everything that you consider what we've gone through here the last couple of years. But he's owed about $7 million, and you could clear up some cap space if you do cut Demarcus Walker. Demarcus Walker would be a little over $5 million in cap space. Now, I think there's a benefit and a disadvantage and an advantage to that. I think the advantage is obviously it's going to open up some more money, but the disadvantage is for a defensive line that needs a whole lot of help with both of our lines in general, but the defensive line as well. That could be a guy that could be part of your team next year that can help up to whatever guy you draft that you take in the draft, or if you can't get that guy in free agency, he might be somebody that you want. What's your opinion on Demarcus Walker, Brian?
He's been a good player, but something else, he's also 30 or 31, somewhere around that, or will be
30 years old.
So I mean that comes into play, and also with the new staff, they're going to evaluate and see who fits their plans, and then you're also managing the cap. When you look at what you could save, you could probably replace his production at a cheaper rate and maybe get somebody. I mean, who's to say one of the coaches that they hire, they signed a player that he has worked with, so he knows that player. So you have that too.
You do bring up a good point. In a new coaching staff. Yeah, it's a new coaching staff because, and I'd have to look even deeper, but I don't think Demarcus Walker has any ties to anybody on this defensive staff right now.
Yeah,
so,
I didn't mean him. I'm talking, as far as Dennis Allen, they could sign somebody cheaper than what Walker is, that Allen has worked with, that would know Allen's system, something to that effect, because that comes into play with any free agent and a new staff.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I agree with this too, because I don't think this is that much money. And I think if you get rid of a guy like Walker, you can bring somebody that's more familiar, maybe at a little bit of a cheaper price. And then you can even if it's an extra $1 million, that can go a long way in a salary cap area of football. That can be allocated to something else. So I was a fan of Demarcus. I will say this, so out of the guys that I'm bringing up on that could be cut on our team right now, that could be possibility of being cut. I was actually a fan of Demarcus Walker last year. So I think that was the first interesting name that popped up. The first one that pops up in my name because I like the way he played, but he's also an easy one to root
Well, he's a emotional leader for the defense, and he knows he's older than most guys on the line, D line. So I mean, yeah, he's a team player, but the NFL is a business.
Yes, it is. And every year we get surprise cuts, we get cuts, we get trade. I mean, it's all this. It's the salary cap era of football. That's where it's at right now, and how crazy it can be when you got players that can be as quality as Demarcus Walker, but then the next year when a coaching changes, that cap casualty. So he's the first one that came to my mind, but there was another one too. The second one is Gerald Everett, the tight end. Now, Demarcus Walker, I like the way he played last year. Gerald Everett, I was not necessarily. I don't know. I wasn't impressed with. Now I get it why they brought him in because he had that history with Shane Waldron, and he was familiar with his offense. But you bring a guy like that in, if you caught him, so you have him gone, you're saving a little over $5 million on the salary cap. What's your? I think in general for the Bears going into this offseason, tight end's going to be a major place they need to upgrade on. Not just on the offensive line, but I think tight end's right there. If I had to put a top 3 or 4 of the position players where they need a major upgrade on, tight end's up there.
Yeah, yeah, I could agree with that. But with Everett, for me, I was just totally underwhelmed by his production or lack thereof. Because when they signed him last year, I was pitching all right, the two tight end set. That him and Komet just seemed like a perfect match. And for whatever reason, that just didn't work out. And again, we talked about this being a business. When you get a contract and you don't measure up to what that contract's worth, you know, you got to expect to be traded or benched or let go of something.
Yeah, he was very unimpressive. I'm very unimpressed with the way he played last year. And I think that's going to be an easy one, especially when his, like I said, he had that connection with some of the offensive coaching staff, and that's all.
I will say that there's one caveat if they do keep him is just how creative Johnson is. And maybe, coaching does matter, but, big picture, I think it's probably in the best interest that they let him go.
Think about this for a second, too, guys, as we're talking about opening up the salary cap. Everything that I've read about this year's draft, the tight end, there's a lot of depth. I've read a lot about running backs. I've also read a lot about tight ends, that this could be a good year for depth in tight ends. So that's something that you can certainly pick up in the draft.
Yeah. The Bears could use that Ty Warden for Penn State, but it's not a necessity. You
No, but I do think it's up
yeah,
on the list.
but you could get one in, say, the 4th or 5th round and be very productive. It's not like, that has to go to the number 1 or first round pick.
We're talking about what could happen if we free up some more cap space for the Bears right now, who already has a lot of money and they already have a lot of cap space, but there could possibly be more. And we're breaking that down today. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can like and subscribe our YouTube page, our YouTube channel. The other guy is Ryan Bates. Ryan Bates was a name that I circled on my list, and a little disappointed. I mean, I know he was hurt last year. I always have a question here too when there's certain teams out there that trade away players like the Bills or the Steelers, there's got to be like a reason behind that. So you could save money with him as well, but is he a type of player that you keep around as a depth piece, or you had the 1 year last year, it was disappointing, he was hurt, you just move on?
To me, he seemed like he was Lucas Patrick 2.0. When Patrick was at Green Bay, he wasn't a starter, but he was a key cog to that offensive line. Came here, injuries, and the same thing happened to Bates when he was at Buffalo. He seemed to be, a super sub, and he comes here. I don't know. Now I know I'm getting off topic. I don't know if that's strength and fitness department's fault or what, but just for some reason, it didn't work out for Bates, and he's another one that underwhelmed for me. And I think the cap savings is a bigger plus for Chicago than keeping him.
Over $4 million too
Yeah.
that you would save him. And it's sad too, because Ryan Bates was a very good player a couple of years ago. Remember the Bears
Yeah.
tried to sign him in free agency, and actually the Bills they matched his offer because they didn't want him to leave.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see where it goes. And again, when we're talking about the draft of this year, this is another year where seems like there's a lot of depth in this draft when it comes to guard play and centers and
Yeah.
the possibility of tackles. So is this a guy you take a chance on to bring back another year, or do you just say, okay, we did this for 1 year, we have a new regime in here, it just didn't work out?
Well, something else too that that kid that they drafted out of Canada that got hurt. Be-
Who is that for? The
Benedict or something like
Bills?
for the Bears. He could probably replace Bates. And you're talking about an undrafted free agent that's going to be a lot cheaper, and you're probably going to get the same production.
You bring up a good point. As we're talking about saving money in the depth and how you want to have this, what type of depth you want to have on this team. And this is the beauty about having a whole brand new coaching staff. Now I know we still have our general manager, but I think that just so far, the first three players that I have brought up, between Walker, between Bates, between Everett, these are players that could be replaced. And then that's why those are the first ones that popped up on my screen when I was getting ready for the show, and we were going over certain scenarios in certain ways that you can save money. You're always looking for the players either that are A, making too much money that underperformed, or B, are those type of players that are pretty good players like a Demarcus Walker, like how I've started off with, but are also players that you can be replaced in the draft. Or to your point, is there any, like you have some of those guys in the undrafted free agents that can hit like that. And I think those are the first three prime examples of the first three players of fitting that category, Brian.
Yeah, because
hey, James Childress. I would say, James Childress, thanks for commenting, man. Thanks for watching the show today, man. We see you out in the chat. Thanks.
I mean, that's why you have the practice squad guys that, maybe for some reason, it's a big jump going from college to pro, whether you're drafted or unsigned drafted. And if you're just on the cusp there and you got this veteran, well, all right, the veteran's going to make the 53 man, and, the undrafted guy is going to be the practice squad. During the course of the year, who's to say, that practice squad guy, hey, he's at equal. That comes in again to free agent. Hey, we got this guy at this low cost. We got this high price guy. Let's get rid of the high price guy who's also got some age on him. So there's so many.
But you're going to see that over the next couple of weeks too.
Yeah, there's so many scenarios that we ain't got enough time to go over.
And this is where it's going to start popping too over the next. So free agency starts on March 10th, and that's only a couple of weeks away. So the new league year starts here soon. I mean, heck, the Eagles just had their parade. I felt like that was it for the 2024 season. The Eagles had their parade yesterday. Now, a couple of days in, the new league is going to start, and now you're going to start hearing about these names popping up. You're going to start hearing more about rumors, and a lot of teams are going to go through their salary cap, their budgets, and they're going to start cutting some of these players that they don't think is going to fit with their team before the free agency period starts, and that's coming up fast and furious. Which this is why I like this time of the year, Brian. This is so much fun to me. The NFL never stops. As we're sitting here talking about players that Bears can reach up with, the Super Bowl just ended last week. Free agency starts literally in a couple of weeks, and all this stuff is firing off right. Like this is what everybody's talking about right now. It wasn't even just a week ago the Eagles won the Super Bowl. That's why I love this, man. This
well, and something else to think about, with trying to, increase the cap and all like that. For the past 4 or 5 years, you just had just a handful of teams that's been in the Super Bowl. So those guys that are free agents, they already got their ring. Now they're looking for, and if they're free agents, they've won their Super Bowl, they got their ring. Now they want that big paycheck. So you want to try to increase the cap as much as you can. To you and I, $63 million. Gee whiz, think about how we could live with that. But for NFL, $63 million. Yeah, that's good, but you can save more. So that's another thing. I say with free agents, you're either going for the big bag, chasing the ring, or you want to be close to your home, or your spouse wants to be closer to home. That's the reason why you pick the team to sign with.
Oh, sorry about that. Am I back on here, Brian?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I heard. It's funny. I just heard like a loud boom, like outside where I live right now, and I lost my
Uh-oh.
connection. I'm like, what was that? I'm like, so for a second, I'm like, I didn't know if I was going to be out or not. So I feel like I'm back on and safe to go here.
Is it storming there?
No, it wasn't storming, but I heard something like somebody like crashed into something, and all of a sudden I
Yeah.
heard like this loud. I heard it was like a loud boom, and then everything just went away for a second. I'm like, oh my
Gee
god, what the
whiz.
heck happened there?
Hope everything's all right.
Yeah, I know, right? Felt like somebody like crashed into something. So, well, so okay, so we're back and ready to go here, guys. Thank you guys for watching the Chicago Sports Podcast and our YouTube channel, YouTube page. Like and subscribe. You can watch some of our past shows. We have shows every day. We're breaking down Bears. We're breaking down Chicago sports. We have more shows coming up here. And Brian made his debut last night, and you can go check that show out. He did an awesome job with everybody, with tracks, with Dano, man, and you guys could check that out too, and tell him, Brian, you're doing freaking awesome, man. Now, this player that Brian, this player that I want to bring up is interesting to me. I'm sorry, I was Tremaine Edmonds. Tremaine Edmonds, our linebacker. Tremaine Edmonds, I think is like a hot name that you're bringing up during this free agency period right now, because did he struggle last year? Yes, I didn't think he had a really good year, especially when you look at the numbers compared to like a guy like TJ Edwards. If you break those two contracts next to each other, and Edwards is making significantly more money, and I think played better than Edwards. Edwards still has 2 years left on his deal. He signed a 4-year, $72 million deal. He's going to make about $17 million this year for the Bears. Is this a type of player that you bring back, depending on the offense? I guess it depends on the new defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen, if it's a fit for him, if he thinks it's going to be better to it be in his scheme. Or do you pursue a trade opportunity with Edwards, or do you go up to him and say, hey, man, could we restructure your deal to take a little bit less, or give a little bit more money up front? I think this is going to be an interesting one, because I think any one of these options is on the table for him.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the number one thing, does Dennis Allen feel like, one, that Edmonds fits his defensive scheme? And two, does he think that he could coach him up to his potential? Because when you look at Edmonds, when he was at Buffalo, I mean, he was a 2-time Pro Bowler. That wasn't just smoke and mirrors. The guy does have talent. And you don't run into too many linebackers that has his size and his speed. But you're also correct in saying, I'd say the past 2 years, it's not that he's played bad. He just hadn't played to what his contract is worth. If the answer is yes, he fits Allen, or Allen's thinks that he could coach him up, if I'm Poles, I would try to talk to his agent and see, hey, can we work on this contract a little bit or whatever? And of course, that's going to take a while, because they're going to be going back and forth. But if Edmonds, if he produces like he's had the past 2 years, this year, you got to seriously think about getting rid of him, because that is a heck of a cap hit. And like you said, TJ Edwards has played circles around him at a significant difference in pay.
I was looking at this. So just to compare here for a second. So yeah, this year Edmonds is going to be like about a little over $17 million. TJ Edwards right at $7 million.
Yeah,
that's a big trade-off, man. I'm like, I didn't realize we signed him for that amount of money when we signed him in free agency.
There is a little bit of an age difference, but I mean, it's not generational age difference like mine and yours. But still, I mean, yeah, I liked Edmonds, and like I said, when the Bears signed him, I was really looking forward to it. And like I said, he hadn't played bad. I'm not, stomp on the guy, but he just hadn't played up to his contract's worth.
Well, Brian, I think this is to your points. This is what happens when you go into free agency. So I think it's cool that we have all this money, all this cap money that we can spend in free agency. But at the
Mhm.
same time, you got to be very careful on who you're signing because a lot of times when you go into free agency, you're overspending on like you're seeing it in baseball right now. You just saw it with Alex Bregman last
I
week.
got
It's in all
two words
sports.
for you. Nate Davis.
That was not a good signing, was that? But it happens all over the NFL. It
Yeah.
does, and there's a reason why a lot of these players get into there's a lot of reasons why these players make it into free agency. Now, sometimes it's not the player's fault. It's because teams have they manage their salary caps in a bad way,
Mhm.
and they either hit or they missed on players, or they thought players were going to pan out a little bit more, and then that puts you in a bad set. Like Cleveland Browns are a perfect example with their Deshaun
Yes.
Watson contract, where they can't really sign anybody right now, where they got to look to start trading players. So that's a scenario where it can really hurt you. But a guy like Edwards, the Buffalo Bills are like, okay, you're a good player, but we're going to have you go out into free agency, and we think we can go into the draft and find somebody else that's going to cost way less. And that's why I think it's so important that you draft well. And I think it's going to be so important for the Bears to find the right players in free agency, but how much you spend on them. And you got to start hitting on some of these players in the draft. You got to have these first, second, third. I mean, these guys got to come in and be playmakers right away, because if not, then you're going to find yourself trying to go get a Trey Smith for 20. I'm guessing he's probably going to look for about $20 million if he hits the open market. And is he a
Yeah.
$20 million player? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's a tough one because when you're talking that kind of money, even if he is that type of player, all right, yippee, you fix that one spot, but for that same 20 million, could you have fixed two or three spots?
Exactly. Exactly. And those depth, and don't forget too, think about this as we go into free agency. The Bears need a lot of depth pieces. I mean, we're still coming off a 5-win team last year, even though we all think, all of us on our shows, I know, Brian, all think they have the foundation and everything ready to go to make a big
Yeah.
jump next year. They still need a lot of help. They're going to they need to fix their lines. And what's missing, I think, too, is a lot of depth, not only on the lines, but on the secondary. Um, Everywhere else in special teams, they need some depth, more depth pieces that they can plug and play. And that's where you need to find some of that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. There's one more I want to bring up for you, Brian. So those are the 4 players that I kind of had circled on my list that I think could be movable, could be replaceable. How about a guy like DeAndre Swift? I like DeAndre Swift. Do I think he's one of the best running backs in the NFL? No. Do I think he's a good running back? Yes. But here's the funny thing. He played with Ben Johnson before. He was on part of the Lions team with Ben Johnson. They
Mhm.
got rid of him. They let him go so they could bring in David Montgomery and draft Jahmyr Gibbs, who I felt like was a better fit for Ben Johnson's offense. Is DeAndre Swift a good fit for Ben Johnson's offense? And if not, is he somebody that you're able to trade?
Well, I think he is a good fit because he does have a little bit of speed and he can catch out of the backfield. The problem is he's not a bell cow running back. That's in my heart of hearts, I'd like to see Chicago, whether it's draft or free agent, get a bigger back that pounds that defense, and then later on in the game, because that defense is beat up, then you start using Swift more and his speed, and he's all over the place. They can't catch him because they're already beat up and out of wind. But yeah, uh, Swift will never be. I shouldn't say never. He shouldn't be the lead uh, running back.
I agree with that. And I see people saying in the chat room now to keep Swift. Keep Swift. Yeah. I here's the thing. You spent the money on him in free agency last year. So I don't think you're going to go out this year in free agency. There's a lot of other needs that the Bears need right now, including the defensive line and the offensive line. So one of these running backs that are out there, I don't think you go out there and spend on a running back. I think if you do keep Swift, this is another draft where the running back class is pretty strong, where you can find these runners in the draft. I think this is the approach you have to go this year for running backs. I don't think you spend money on one. I think unless you trade Swift, you have to really go into this draft and find that runner that would fit Ben Johnson's offense, to your points, Brian, for that.
And what you just said ties in perfectly with free agents and the drafts. They have to work with each other. And what I mean by that, I mean, number one, getting your cap as strong as you possibly can. If that means getting, look for a better word, dead weight on your team to increase the cap, or renegotiate contracts or whatever with certain players to get more cap, you do that. And then if you're smart and a little bit frugal with your draft or free agent picks, when it comes draft time, you look what your needs are, and you also look at what positions are strong in the draft. That way, you ideally you would like to be able to draft the best available player, because that means, on a scale to one to whatever, you're picking, the top guy. Uh, but that don't happen. But I mean,
It,
that is the goal.
and I like what Chris said. Take a flyer on a running back and wide receiver in the 4th round. I agree. I think
Yeah.
I think this year your free agency better be focused on the lines and player, because I don't think wide receivers are our biggest need right now. And I think players like running backs and a wide receiver, if you find some good ones in the draft this year, that's where you find that.
Well,
Depending
now
what position player you like.
if you're talking about a cheap, 1-year deal, that's one thing, because you still got to get 90 players on your roster in training camp. But yeah, as far as like, spending the big money, the splash signings and all like that, yeah, that you want to, in Chicago's case, the line, whether that's defense or offensive line, they need help at both.
And I agree with that. And we got a lot of time to be breaking this down, because the good thing is we got a long time until the draft. So we're going to find out what direction they go as free agency starts here in just the next couple of weeks. We're going to be getting more news about cuts, about what players are deciding to keep, or which players are going to decide to get rid of. That's all coming up here over the next couple of weeks. As I said, free agency starts on March 10th, and we don't have a whole lot of time. So between now and free agency, so teams got to think fast and think of what they do. Thank you guys so much in the chat room. I see Chris, James, man. Thank you guys so much for watching. Everybody watching the show today, this afternoon on a Saturday. There's never a bad time, Brian, to talk about the Bears, and it was a lot of fun to get to know you a little bit, man. It's fun to talk Bears with you, man, because you're a diehard, passionate fan, my friend.
Thank you very much. It's nice to meet you, and it's nice to meet the people in chat. And I'm just tickled to death of being a part of the team now.
Well, we're very excited to have you, Brian. So thanks again,
you.
man. And you guys keep up to date with all the shows. Don't forget to like and subscribe our YouTube page. Check out all of our shows. Brian did a show last night with Trax and Dano. You can check that out. And also some of our past shows. And we got some more shows coming up. And then you'll get that notification on your phone once you like it. And once our show goes live, it'll pop up and you will be good to go. So, Brian, I hope you have a good rest of your weekend, man. And it was nice to meet you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. I hope you and the chat have a safe, blessed weekend. And I don't know how it is where you're at, but us in Indiana and Chicago area, it's cold. So everybody stay warm. If you got to go out, layer up.
Yeah, man. It's raining out here. It's chilly. It's raining. And but stay safe out there, guys. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a good rest of your night.